Pranakasha live stream.
Hey folks, it's Matt at Pranakasha Productions, and today we are talking with Larry Nemecek, otherwise known as Dr. Trek.
That's what they say, Matt. Or
Yeah.
some people that say that because I said to say that, so they do.
Okay. Well, I'll say that.
Okay.
Anyhow,
See,
before we get
isn't
into
that
it,
work?
folks, make sure to give us a like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe and leave a comment. And if you really like this video, go ahead and share it on your favorite social media platform of choice. All those things make the YouTube algorithm happy with us and help us promote the channel and promote good content like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, were you out Star Trek Las Vegas last year?
I have been at Vegas every year since the year before creation even did it. So yes.
Okay, because I was there too.
Oh.
Were you in the
And you
vendor
didn't come
room?
by and say hi, Matt. What happened?
I was surprisingly. I'm a bit of a newbie as far as conventions go. Like that was my second convention in my whole
awesome.
life.
Okay. Oh, what was the first one?
The first one was another creative Star Trek convention that was put on in the Seattle area at least 20 years ago. And I was like,
Okay.
this is kind of lame. I mean, I'm not really into this. And then Leonard Nimoy shows up. And he gave like an hour and a half talk. And it was like the best thing ever.
Mhm.
So, wow. After that, I was like, whoa, it was neat. And it was
20
back.
years ago was getting down to the last years he did anything like that.
It might have been 30 years ago. Actually, I think it was in the 90s. So I guess that's 30 years now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then forget what I just said.
Yeah.
It wasn't so special. No.
Well, okay. I'm already going on a tangent. Now, the game that we play is that if I go on a tangent, you bring me back.
Oh, no, wait. That's usually what my guests do. They bring me back off a tangent.
Okay, well, this is a short one. I just posted something on Facebook the other day where it was one of those memes where they said that 1970 is as far away from today as 1918 is from 1970. And I was like, ooh, that makes me feel old.
Well, yes, you can do that. But then at the same time, I'm like, why did they pick 1970? They could in 1918. They had a thing about World War I ending. It was like, okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious about because I do that. I remember going for years. The first time I thought, oh my, like I'm talking to somebody as a quasi adult, and I'm like, oh, they were born after Apollo 11 landed. That was the first one to me that like registered that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, now it's like when my kids are the age I was when I did something.
Yeah.
Including moved to LA from Oklahoma, married with 2 little kids. I was like, oh, okay, this is not fun now.
Yeah,
but
that's wild.
It happens.
So do you still live in LA now?
Yes.
Oh, what part?
Burbank, LA. We're just north of Burbank. We lived in Burbank proper for like 15 years, nearly 20 years. And now we're just a little north.
Okay.
And we empty nested in short and came down a little. And
well, as you know, LA is a gigantic city. And it's like, when you say you live in LA, the next question is, well, what part? Yeah.
It's nooks and crannies. We're in like one of the canyons along one of the freeways just north.
Okay.
So it's like if I drove in Burbank, it would take 20 to 30 minutes to get to Paramount, just say as a landmark. And now it would take me 30 to 40 minutes to get to Paramount. So
that's cool.
I don't go there quite the amount that I did 20 years ago, but yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's neat. Yeah, I have an aunt who lives in Redondo Beach, and
that's on south. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also went down to L.A. recently. In the historical district, Jay Lee, who plays John Lamar on the Orville, put on a classical piano recital, and it was in, darn it, I forget what the thing was. It was like this arts center, kind of right in the middle of the city, and It's funny because it was like a fortress. It had like walls that were like, I swear, 15 feet high.
Was it
You know,
downtown?
it was in what's called the historical district, which is
Okay.
look, it's just, like a Latino district,
Mm-hmm.
and there was like homeless people out in the street, and like practically camping right there on the sidewalk, right in front of the gate. So like it was really sketchy. But then you go inside, and there's like half the cast of the Orville was there, and all Jay Lee's friends and stuff.
Hmm.
And I was like, wow, what did I just drop myself into? And all I had to do to go was I found out about it and I bought tickets for it online, and they were like $25, and I could come in.
And there you are. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it
Yeah.
was an amazing recital too. He's like super good.
Has he?
Yeah,
I know I've seen all the earlier seasons, and I haven't seen the new Hulu. Did he ever get a
yeah.
chance to play? Does his character play in character, play keyboards,
No, they haven't had him play on the show yet, which is surprising because they have
or
other
even mention to
excuses.
set it up so that at some point you know.
They should. Maybe they will this season. I hope they do because I mean, it's already kind of an interesting gimmick when you have like an actor on a show that you like that plays classical piano. Just that in itself is a good enough gimmick where you'd want to go here and see how good they are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How can you
But he
not
was
use that?
damn good. In fact, he played this one Chopin. He played a lot of Chopin, and one of them talked to a pianist friend of mine and said that's like the hardest one of them all. And he
Mhm.
sailed through it technically. I don't think there were any clinkers at all, and he got all the notes. Plus, it was beautifully interpreted, great musicianship, everything. I mean, it was like a concert pianist. I was like, "Whoa, this guy is really good."
There you are. Well,
You
yeah, I
know?
was going to say, I'll see your Jonathan Frakes still trumpling on the trombone and raise you one.
Yeah. So, anyways, we already diverged over to the Orville, which, so you are an Orville fan, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed
Great.
Orville, like I enjoyed Star Wars, like I enjoy most science fiction, even if I don't always make time to watch. But it's just,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Well,
think
this,
the Orville seemed like it grew out of a dissatisfaction with where Discovery was going or the decisions they were making. And it's interesting now because it feels like Strange New Worlds is, it's weird. You almost say Strange New Worlds seems like it's walking some of the same ground that Orville did, but Orville was walking that ground from Next Gen. So,
exactly. I mean, it was obvious to me when I saw the first episode of the Orville that the whole thing was based on Next Generation. It had the same exact vibe, even the lighting and everything on the ship. It was all very that positive Next Generations type of thing. So, and I agree with you. I think a big reason why we have Strange New Worlds now, which is, as far as I'm concerned, last week it totally knocked it out of the park with that episode
mhm,
with Spock and Chapring.
yeah.
And in fact, I thought the episode was just rocking even before they did the Freaky Friday thing. Even without that gimmick, it still would have been a great episode. Because
Mhm.
the way that they interacted, like the writing was perfect. I mean, it'd be so easy to screw up Spock and T'Pring, right?
Right. Well, I mean,
But
I hate to say this, but I've seen that. I've seen not so much screwed up, but just like not quite miss the mark or be heavy handed or be on the
right,
nose.
but it was so well directed and so well acted that I mean, and this is some other people have said that like, how in the world can two Vulcans end up being so freaking sexy when they're talking Vulcan speak at each other, but just the innuendo is just so palpable. Like they did it so well,
Well, it helps if you
you know?
have two good looking human actors masquerading as Vulcans to start with.
That's true.
But no,
But
yeah,
the
yeah,
thing
they
was, they had the
great cast.
subtlety, and it was sexy, it was ironic, it was funny, it had like everything in it, and like just I thought it was just so well done. And that was like again, that was even before they did the Freaky Friday switching the Katra thing.
Hmm.
By the time they hit that, I was like, they it caught me completely by surprise. But I was like, oh, okay, now what's going to happen? But I was already completely sold on the episode right up to that point.
Yeah, they just keep it. It's what they're doing. Exactly what Leonard figured out, 50 years ago, is how to act Vulcan. And then Tim did the same thing, and everybody else. It's like everything has to be within this, within this narrow bandwidth. You have to have highs and lows. It's like a singer who it's easy to belt out high notes. It's hard to belt out. It's hard to belt out quiet notes and have it project. There's the
Right.
And you've got that narrow bandwidth, the oscillating tone for playing a Vulcan by the book. And then when they are off kilter, when something is wrong, then it's like typing in all caps. It's screaming at you, but still within that. And that's what Ethan's learned to do, and that's what Gia is doing. And then he was cast for Discovery 3 years ago,
Right.
and then they've cast her now for the series, and the way they got them to have chemistry together is amazing.
Oh yeah, she's great. That was such good casting. And she's so beautiful. Even when she's not a Vulcan, she's just naturally so beautiful. And the other thing that I really dug, and I didn't even realize this until I started checking her out a little bit on IMDb, but I should have known just looking at her name, is that she's Indian. I mean, she's from Canada, but her parents are like from Punjab, and that's so great that finally we're getting representation from Indian actors that aren't some stereotype. Like, Big Bang Theory, you've watched that show, right?
Right, sure.
So we had Raj, right? And Raj's sister and Raj's parents and everything. So there was one of the first hit shows that had Indian representation. But still, they were playing a stereotype, but she completely is not,
Oh, right. Well, it's
because she's a Vulcan.
She's getting to be Vulcan. I would say Big Bang Theory, I know, yes, they went the stereotype, but then sometimes they went like against this. They played with being against the stereotype too.
That's true. I mean, what they did, the comedy that they did within that, because I've been to India and I have some Indian friends and stuff, so it was actually pretty sophisticated, a lot of the comedy. So I could see how an Indian person could watch the show and really enjoy it and get the jokes. Like the way that his dad and him interacted, and his dad and his mom, so, and yet they still sort of played to, this is kind of what Westerners expect Indian people to be like, right?
But that's what his sister busted up a lot of the stereotypes. It's almost like Raj was being uber Indian the way Spock tried to be uber Vulcan, and Worf tried to be uber Klingon,
Okay.
Quark tried to be uber Ferengi, and the others around him would go, oh, get off, you're the raised by humans, or the human half human, or the existing with humans, and everybody around them are like, oh, get off your high horse. You don't have to be the uber example of your species, your culture,
Yeah.
They play, but that's some of
they hit that. It was so well written. Again, the script was perfect in my opinion. Okay, and then it was so well acted, and then when you have actors doing that well, that means that the director is really right on too. So everything was just so well done in that episode.
And I mean, the thing about we've got the showrunner, so Harry Alonzo Myers, and then there's 2 or 3 writers that I've seen mentioned a lot, Kayla Cooper and Davey Perez. There have been some Ron or Roger Wolkoff, but they've been around the show for a long time. And all the times we were virtual when they were trying to get going, like 2 years ago on Star Trek Day in September, they did a panel that was really great. And all of them talked about being uber original and next gen fans, and what an honor it was. And they weren't just blowing smoke. They were tearing up and getting verklempt.
Right.
And you could tell it was for real. But now a lot of these credits since then, and that was 2 years ago, and they're still with the show. Like Robin Wasserman is writing. Some of these people I don't even have I haven't met anybody because we've been locked down, and they're in Toronto. But even some of the newer names, and the director of Amok Spock was or Spock Amok. I always say it backwards. I keep saying Amok Spock, like Amok Time, only Amok Spock. Rachel Leiterman, I'm just sitting here looking and going, we're talking here about how well directed it was. And I'm still sitting around going, oh, I wonder what she's done. Because they have a little bit of a lab situation going on now that they, with the Toronto shows anyway, where they are, where they're trying them out on different, the short treks was great for that. But now from Discovery to, I mean, Picard was LA, so it wasn't that much that way so much, but from Discovery into Strange New Worlds now, it's like a lab situation. They can grow and try people out, and I don't know. I'm looking
So
at
most of the cast is Canadian. Is that what you're saying?
Well, they're obviously some of them aren't, but
Right.
the leads, but a lot of the secondary and the guest stars and extras, but a lot of the crew are Canadian because they're filming Canada and they have to fulfill the hiring quotas.
Okay, interesting.
I'm just
I didn't even realize it was in Toronto. So I wonder how close they are to the Expanse, where the Expanse filmed their stuff.
I don't know. This is at like CBS's studios they've built now. So I don't know, but this was her first Strange New Worlds to direct. I'm just looking.
Okay.
Nothing at no Discovery. She's been a first and a second AD, and she was a first AD on several Galacticas, Battlestar Galacticas and Caprica.
The reboot.
The reboot.
Okay.
And then no, she was assistant directing in 1978.
Yeah.
But she hadn't done any other. She hadn't even worked as a lower director on Discovery. So this was like her first Star Trek to direct. So
interesting. Yeah, it's like Strange New Worlds is just knocking it out of the park. I mean, the thing that's so great about that show, I mean, everybody, including me, is saying, "Oh, finally, this is like Star Trek." And the other thing that they've done is like, okay, we've watched 5 episodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we already feel connected to all these different characters on the show. That quick.
Even beyond knowing that the reason there is this series is because people fell in love with Anson Mount back on Discovery.
Right.
Okay.
But so Anson Mount is not really the focus of the show. I mean, he's like the glue, right?
He's got his moments obviously in his plots, and they started off really leaning into the whole Telosian, I know my death bit, and you're like, oh, please don't make that every episode revolve around that. And they got that across the first time or two. Then people gave him talking to. Spock and Number One both go, oh, come on, snap out of it.
Plus, they also gave a counter that like, maybe your destiny isn't set in stone. Maybe that's just one path. So, and I'm glad they did that.
Right. But I mean, we saw the 3 leads. We saw a bit of, even, not a lot of Number One, Rebecca Romaine, but a little bit. And then, but Spock and Ethan and Anson. But this show is cast the way they've done the legacy characters and the new characters, and the way they played with stuff. And it's going to get, I've watched some screeners ahead, and it's about to get really intense with, I don't mean intense as an emotion, but intense of, oh my God, they're really using the Star Trek universe and not as fan service.
Good.
Which has been, and so far people have been a little, but nothing they've done has really, it's validated what we kind of assumed in a couple of cases, like Spock and like T'Pring and Chapel knowing T'Pring, or, noticing that Uhura goes, Mr. Spock, she's lovely. Who is she? In amok time, and going, T'Pring's on the ship with Uhura, but they're never together. I mean, you might say that's splitting hairs, but I mean, they've really done a good job, I think. And I know some people are upset and some people are just crying about it, but people also just can't help but love the show overall. And then if they bemoan a moment where it looks like they've violated canon somewhere.
Yeah.
If you go back and look, it's like, well, let's look at this again. What have we carried in our brain? I said canon, but it wasn't even that. It's just like, what's the assumptions we made that we need to stop to think about? Yeah. And let's go back and look at them again. And that's where we are.
I think they're doing a great job. Like the other, I mean, they're doing things like,
I think Major would love this Chapel because she's getting to do stuff.
Oh, she rocks. Nurse Chapel, what they're doing with Nurse Chapel, it's completely unexpected. Like, this is a way different Nurse Chapel than the one from TOS, right?
This one isn't Jean's girlfriend who's number 8 on the call sheet. And that's what, it's not the 60s TV, and they're letting her do it. But I don't think anything she's done, if you think Majel playing Loaxana Troy, and it's a different character, but what Majel was capable of doing, and once or twice Chapel got to do when everyone thinks Sargon is dead in Return to Tomorrow, and it winds up being in her, and she gets to hypo Spock because he's got the bad guy Haynock in it. I mean, there's once or twice when Chapel actually got to do something after the first episode, her big dramatic show, which she really didn't do much in, but stand around and go, oh Roger Corby. But other than that, she never, she handed McCoy hyposprays.
Yeah.
But there were one or two times she got to do something. And I just think Majel is smiling down on this, kind of going like, why didn't you ever let me do this? But I don't think it's out of kilter with, and plus we've got 7 years to cover, and a lot's going to happen to a lot of these people in 7 years. So,
yeah. They're the other thing that's really good about it is it's intelligent, and there's a lot of subtle stuff that happens that's people that are really observant and that people are really into Star Trek pick up, but they don't like hit you over the head with every single thing, and that's another reason why the show is so good. Yeah, it's just like there's a few slight flaws. Like I did notice there was a continuity problem in an episode a while back. Like, I mean, this is really
just from scene to scene. You mean like
okay. So number one had her shirt torn, right? She tore her shirt.
Yes.
And then the very next scene, she's in the sick bay and the shirt's not torn anymore. So I'm like, oops, they goofed that up. That was just a continuity thing.
That's an homage to The Enemy Within when they had the scratches on the wrong side. That's an homage. It's an homage, Matt.
And there's little things. I mean, if you're a Trekkie, you're hyper detail oriented, so you pick up things like, oops, they goofed that up. Like there was another thing, like on the episode with the comet.
Mm-hmm.
The show starts, the comet's practically in orbit around the planet. And then a few minutes later, Spock goes, "Oh, there's a problem with the comet. It's gonna hit the planet." And we're like, well, they probably would have known that about 10 years previously had they just watched the trajectory of it. So things like that,
Yeah. Well,
but you let that go. Another one okay, since we're on the subject. So in the first one, in the Day the Earth Stood Still one, where Captain Pike goes, all right, bring the Enterprise into low Earth orbit, and so they can take a look at us. 2 seconds later, whoosh, there it is, like 10,000 feet above the ground. I'm like, yeah, what did they do? Just warp in or something? So stuff like that.
A little subjective time.
But you gotta let that go because they don't want to waste 3 minutes showing the Enterprise come down, so they just snap their fingers and it's instantly there.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Well, that moment always reminds me of Patterns of Force when they're when all the mobsters are about to string up Kirk and Spock there at the end when they're in the pool table room. And then
you mean a piece of the action?
They have people a piece of the action. What did I say?
Patterns of Force.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Piece of the action. PA, not PF. They call down the ship. They bring the ship and load to stun. Like, here's another thing. Like somewhere along the way in modern Trek, and I mean like from Next Gen onward, they never do wide field anything with phasers, ships, or nobody ever does a wide field anything. Wide field stuns, wide field. But anyway, they do that. I love that in Patterns of Force, where they just stun the whole city.
Piece of the action.
Did I say it again? Piece of the action. Matt, you're just bringing out the Nazi in me, Matt. Oops. The fake. But there's just that's what that reminds me of. It's like, because I love Jojo or Krakow, and he says, "Hey, I only saw 3 guys in that."
Yeah,
ship.
there was only 3 guys on that ship, Kirk. Where's the rest of them?
Yes,
I think you're lying. I think that's all there is.
Piece of the action. Yes, that's what happens.
One of my favorite episodes, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so we might as well go there. So, what would you consider the best TOS episode?
Well, I have 2 favorites from all the years. My 2 co-favorites are Journey to Babel and The Doomsday Machine.
And the what?
and the Doomsday Machine.
Oh, ooh, yeah, those are really good.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I just
Ooh.
thought of them. I mean, that doesn't mean that. I mean, then after that, are the next 4 or 5 years. I mean, Amok Time and
Okay. Wow, you still I mean, I always say the trouble with tribbles.
well, Tribbles. It's kind of it's. I don't want to say it's a token show to me, but I
Now,
mean,
what
Amok
ab you
Time
got to
and
have Balance of Terror in there, right?
Tribbles and yeah, It's like, oh, Balance of Terror is the first Rhineland show. Okay, I know it's a good show, but I see my people. I always realized that I was enjoying the heart of the second season episodes. And
Okay.
then years later, I find out those are the ones that Gene Kuhn worked on. I mean, from midway through first season. But I think of the heart of the show
Did
as
you
Amok
see
Time and Journey to Babel and
did you
Doomsday Machine
see
and all those.
the original series when as it came out, or did you see it in
Oh
reruns?
no, no, no! I'm a rerun baby.
So am I.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
started watching it when I was in third grade. Every day after
Oh
school, I
wow.
could come home and watch an episode of Star Trek on reruns.
See, I didn't till I was in like ninth grade.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't. I mean, my science teacher shamed me into what she found out I wasn't watching Star Trek after school, and she shamed me into, oh, don't tell me you don't watch Star Trek, Larry. So I had to go home and start watching. I knew there was
Okay.
this vague thing about a space show with a guy with the ears.
Yep.
Now, Lost in Space, I remember watching, but I also didn't run the TV in my house when I was really
I
little.
watched Lost in Space, I'm sure I didn't watch all the
I mean, it came and
episodes.
went. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I used to out in the middle of Oklahoma and 3 networks. I remember I either watched it or you didn't watch it. I mean, you couldn't watch everything.
Right.
So, but if you were watching something, you like watched it.
Star Trek, the original series, I can honestly say I've watched each episode at least 10 times.
That's probably
And I
right.
know that
Yeah.
show backwards and forwards. Plus, I
But
have all the
some
DVDs.
more than others. Like I did a viewing show just a week or two ago on Alana Troyes, and I had not watched that in ages and ages.
Hmm.
And it was like, okay, and it was like, oh, okay, here's things I never picked up on, or here's
Mm-hmm.
like part of it was like watching it in HD made it easier,
Mm-hmm.
you know, even with the CGI, the new CGI. But
I don't like the CGI. Actually, the DVD set that I have, I proudly have, has the original special
mhm.
effects with the models. To tell you the truth, I mean, I still think that looks more real than the CGI. The only thing the CGI does is it gives
Yep.
you some more interesting camera angles of the ship
Right.
sometimes, but it's not
Well,
believable. It still looks like
yeah.
cartoon to me.
Well, it's part of it. It's the CGI from 2009, and there's a whole saga because I watched the sausage being made. The
Mhm.
first third of the series, they were struggling. They went with a startup unit rather than go and get Gary Hutzel and Doug Drexler's unit that was already up and running and hyper Star Trek fans and experience from the Galactica bunch.
Okay.
And they were going to go with them, and then they decided to go cheap and build up their own in-house unit, which okay, but that means that the first few episodes are just, the first quarter maybe, because they're not doing them in order. They're doing them
Right.
to air in a new syndication package, and so they're all over the map. First season, second season, third season, but
Mm.
they weren't in any kind of an order. And they did a mix of doing one or two really challenging CG shows and then lean on some easy, like all they do is like put a planet in,
Mm.
and do a phaser beam or something. But the really high, like Doomsday Machine is the one with the most effects in it, and a lot of choice actually. I'd forgotten how much there is. Where in the original, all they had the new Klingon model, but all they would do is mainly show it in profile, like just you just do the Enterprise flying across, and then to pursuing it, you'd see the Klingon battle cruiser flying across.
Wait, what are you talking
Anyway,
about?
but a lot of that first era of the new
Wait,
remastered,
what episode are you talking about?
Alana Troyes.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the Doomsday Machine.
Yeah, but the
Uh,
Doomsday Machine, so the CGI really helped it because now instead of those static same kind of thing flying
yeah,
by, and them shooting the cone of the Doomsday Machine when they go by,
yeah,
or it's either that or it's the dead on looking in with the orange fire,
right.
or the profile with the ship that's really bigger than it should be getting close to the mouth.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah,
But
they
they were
mess up the
able to,
scale because sometimes the
yeah,
shuttlecraft looked way too big and
yeah, the shuttlecraft looked as big as the two Connies, but
yeah.
the CG, I was amazed because the way they did the choreography of the battle, basically,
Hmm.
it's like all the dialogue you keep cutting back to the bridge and what Decker and Spock and Kirk are saying.
Hmm.
it makes sense because they were able to actually have the CG do what they're saying, instead of they're saying all these lines and the visual effects guys are going, well, you got 3 angles, guys.
Which one do you want?
This angle, or this angle? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
But when you see the CG version, it's like, oh, when he says hard to port Sulu and they do this, and then it's coming, it really feels like you're watching a battle happen with 2 ships and this robot monster.
Yeah.
But anyway, the bottom line is that the first third of the series that they did, and they're not even in order, so they pop up. There was the great nacelle caps scandal, because at the beginning they couldn't even get the nacelle caps to, the Bussard ram scoops. They couldn't even get the rotary effect on the front of the nacelles to go.
Well, that's no good.
Right. Or it was a dead effect, or something was not.
Okay. Now I need to discuss
this for a second. By the end of it, they did, but and they never went back and fixed them. Is the other thing. They just let them sit there.
Now, speaking of rotating nacelles, those turbine things inside the nacelles, I noticed. Well, okay. First, I want to back up and say I shouldn't be so harsh on the CGI, because there are some CGI clips that look really good.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what you were saying too. It's just the quality is there's a pretty wide range.
By the end of the thing, the end of the thing, they got the quality up where it should have been, but they didn't go back and fix the early ones. Is the problem.
Right.
So
the planets all look way better than the original. The TOS planets, most of them look pretty.
Well, they were like 3 planets,
bland.
and they would put a different color filter on it.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and especially the Earth. The original TOS Earth was not too convincing. Yeah. So, yeah. So I was gonna say, well, on multi-engine airplanes, what you do is, if you have this, and if the prop's going counterclockwise on this engine, you're going to have it go counterclockwise on that, so that so the torque caused by the spinning engine cancels out, and the plane doesn't try to go like this. Mm-hmm. Well, I noticed on certain shots we didn't have those counter-rotating turbines, so I was a bit upset about that. They were rotating in the same direction.
Well, we're talking about hydrogen scoops, not aerodynamics in Earth atmosphere.
Yeah, but there's something spinning. Whatever's spinning inside there is going to create a certain amount of torque.
Maybe it's not actually something spinning. Maybe it's all a light effect. Maybe it's a plasma flow thing, and the way it's being sucked in a vacuum and blah, 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 blah. I don't know.
Okay.
I hear you, though. I hear you. This is what I do. Is like, when I was a kid, my first instinct watching those things was to like take notes, and then if you ever saw an issue, like figure out the reason why. Or the planets are all named all over the place. That's my, one of my passions was stars and planets, and get them organized, and use the real science as long as you could, and make the real science work at the end. And
okay, let's test that ability. So now we're gonna go to.
What?
Balance of Terror. So in Balance of Terror, your phaser room is basically like a torpedo room, where you call down, and then you tell the guys to press the button, and then they fire the phasers. But in that episode, the phasers looked way more like photon torpedoes, and then halfway through the episode, they kind of acted more like depth charges than phasers. So how do you bend your mind around that?
You bend your mind that right after this, that was the first time that, let's just say, that's the first time phasers had really been used against a quasi-equal opponent. And right after that, they immediately made several upgrades to their systems. And one of them was this: we can't yell fire phasers, fire phasers, fire phasers, fire phasers through 15 intercoms. You got a weapon that fires faster than light, or at least at light speed. You can't slow it down for 10. Anyway,
actually it doesn't. And when you watch how it squirts out, that's way slower than the speed of light.
Oh yeah, and the squibs, yes, yeah. So I think there's a refiguration there, and then because also there weren't photon torpedoes. That effect is basically kind of what they use for photons.
Right. So they hadn't created them yet. They hadn't dreamed them up.
Yeah, they didn't really have photons until a little bit later.
Okay, here's another one. How do you explain that the Romulan commander looked a whole lot like Spock's dad.
Are you being speciest? Are you saying that all Romulans look alike? Is that what you're saying? All
No, I'm not.
Vulcanoids?
I'm just saying that he
Think
sure looked a
Vulcanoids look
whole.
alike?
So maybe the premise of the show was actually maybe Spock really was a Romulan spy after all.
Okay, so if Balance of Terror had come after Journey to Babel, there might be a little more weight to this. But since Balance of Terror was a year before Journey to Babel, then that never bothered me. I never thought about it. It never.
But you can't deny it. They sure look an awful lot alike, don't
they
they?
do look an awful lot alike. They also look like that guy that ran the sawmill on Earth, and Here Come the Brides.
Well, I didn't catch that part.
There was a their thing about the Seattle, the wives for the miners and loggers in Seattle that came out of real life, called Here Come the Brides. It was a sitcom dramedy hour-long show, and it has all these Star Trek connections. It was like after Star Trek was off, right after, like 1970, 71. But Mark Leonard played the adversary, not bad guy, but he owned the logging mill, and the Bolt brothers owned this mountain and logged on it. And that's where Bobby Sherman, who was teen heartthrob, he was the youngest brother, but the two older ones were the guy that played Lazarus, who was the second casting, and then the guy and then it was, what's his name from it was a bit part, but then he was one of the Vol feeders of Vol. That's the one who he and the girl are over there learning how to kiss and saying, "Oh, look, we're corrupting them." It's David Soul, who wound up being on Starsky and Hutch. That's what I'm trying to get to.
He was on Starsky. Whoa, wait a minute! He was in that episode. Holy!
Yes, yeah, he's one of the wigged feeders of Vol.
Oh, I didn't know that. I missed that.
And then you think later on about Starsky and Hutch, but in the middle of between those two, he was the middle Bolt brother on Here Come the Brides. Was 2 seasons, and it's that song In Seattle, the greenest green you've ever seen are in Seattle, the bluest skies you've ever seen are in Seattle, and the hills the greenest green in Seattle. Yeah, that was the theme. But anyway, and then this woman wrote a professional, it was like a fan novel, but she got it through the pocketbooks, and it's called Ishmael. And the whole premise was that Spock gets, I don't know, knocked in the head or irradiated, and he winds up in an alternate universe in territorial 1880s Seattle. But the whole thing plays on the fact that Mark Leonard played Aaron Stemple, who runs the mill, and he recognizes these people as familiar. And it was totally like a fan service, like long novel. And they thought, oh, it was really well written. And it wasn't until it was printed by Pocketbooks and Screen Gems, who own, their publishing licensee, went, are you guys gonna like pay us for these characters and for
Come on, it's a fan film.
No, it's like we've got properties and you didn't pay for it. Anyway, yeah, which was funny. It was like after that they kind of refurbished the way that they approved and read Star Trek novels. They didn't like treat them as
okay. One final thing.
Anyway, just funky.
So
you caused this with your Mark Leonard question. Your whole commander.
We're going to go more techno babble. Not techno babble, but a technological problem rather than a genetic one. You know how when the Enterprise fires the phasers and they go out like this at like a 30-degree angle.
We're talking about original series.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then somehow they come back. So how does that work?
Well, I don't know about 30 degrees. There's a built-in phase redistributor in the phaser beam that if they bow out coming out of the ship, they wind up fine-tuning by the time they hit their target.
They bow back in. So there's some kind of like space distortion thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's called the Pay Us More for Our Visual Effects Budget in 1967, and we'll do better.
Is there any reason why they did that? Was it supposed to be a perspective? Because I mean, even when you're not looking straight on, you see it go.
It's like they were trying so hard. I mean, they had every visual effects house, and I mean, this is so antiquated. but in 66 and 67, 68, they were having like, there were 4 optical houses because it was all there was no, digital anything.
Right.
It was they're literally laying bits of film over, which is why you have the matte lines waver and stuff. They're literally doing optical print runs and rephotographing, stacking up the film with different elements on it and then photographing that again, which is why they go soft sometimes. But they literally had everybody running around the clock, and they couldn't pay an arm and a leg for it. And people were happy to have the work. But they were, and some shows would be real light, and some shows would be, they'd save up and they'd have a heavy show like Doomsday Machine or something. But even just drawing, like on Next Generation days, it was even every time somebody just fired a hand phaser, that was $1,000 if you saw the beam. And you notice there's times when there's a lot of shooting going on, and sometimes if it's like a close up, maybe somebody shoots and then after that they do this and their hand goes out of frame, so you don't see the phaser beam, but you hear the sound because audio is a lot cheaper. And it was kind of like, okay, we need to cut this back. We've got 6 beams, visible beams. We're going to have 4. We just saved 2,000. It's
no. One thing though is the phaser beams in the original Star Trek actually look pretty cool. If you go frame by frame, you can actually, some of the stuff they do, or like the photon torpedoes, if you go frame by frame, there's actually a lot happening in it. You can sort of see it evolving. And
those real simple emanation lines are kind of ish at the but
because I've tried to fake that, and I can never get quite the right look. It's close. It looks like a phaser beam, but it doesn't look like a real phaser beam.
Oh, well, Matt,
all right.
this has
So
been an interesting soft opening to whatever it is we're talking about.
okay, so now this will nicely transition us into fan films. So you have played Dr. McCoy in fan films, right?
Yeah.
Was it Star Trek Continues?
It was Star Trek Continues. Yeah, the first couple.
Okay. How did that happen?
It happened because Chuck Huber, who was the original guy who was going to play McCoy, and they did some shorts that were kind of like proof of concepts, some vignettes, and he played McCoy in 1 or 2 of those, and then he couldn't, something in his family, something I forget what was going on, between he couldn't and he didn't think he could sustain going forward if it was going to stay a very low key, volunteer, I got to put my time into earning money kind of situation. And at the beginning, no one knew it was going to blow up into what it did blow up. And this is in the fallow times. There's no other Star Trek happening. It's just a vacuum. There's other fan films happening, but on different scales, different levels. But basically 3 weeks before the first episode was shot, thanks to a mutual friend who did audio, Ralph Miller, who knew me. I only knew 3 people at the beginning I knew Ralph, who did sound, and I knew Tim and Lisa, who did makeup. And I knew them they were at the Vegas cons and did people's makeup. And I forget how I first met them, but I knew them. And I didn't know anybody else, none of the cast, none of the rest of the crew. And a lot of the crew was just meeting because they were all coming together from all over the country on the first time, on the first episode. And I got called like 3 weeks out. And this was right at the same time. Aside from Next Generation Companion, my other big success story in print is the Stellar Cartography map and book set that's official. And I became the custodian of what Mike Okuda and then Jeff Mandel, and I'd work with them, or work with Jeff anyway, on a lot of things. And now it's kind of in my lap to keep it going. And I hope we can update the 2018 again, because they're throwing out all kinds of new astrogeography all the time now in the new shows.
Astrogeography.
But, yeah, I didn't say astrography. I didn't want to totally blow your mind, but like the thing is the astrogator in between helm and navigation. That was Franz Joseph's word for it. The big wheel.
Oh yeah, the twirly thing.
We were going to do this first edition of Stellar Cartography, which is the first cool outside the box nonfiction for Trek that had been done in ages, because pocketbooks quit doing any. And aside from just the straight on, tech manuals and nothing cool like the old school blueprints when you were a kid or something.
I have those. Yeah. I have those in my bedroom. I could actually go and get it and show you. Oh, I think they're cool.
Mine are over there somewhere. But I was so excited about getting asked to do this, and it was going to be February and March of 2013, it'll be 10 years next year. Wow. And in the middle of all this, Vic called me and said, would you like to play McCoy? I need a McCoy real quick. And I'm like, oh, okay. Oh my God, of course I would. Of course, McCoy's my guy. Just tell me that we're not doing it in February, March. And it was like, actually, January, February. Actually, we are.
Actually, we're doing it next week. What's your schedule?
Yeah, we're doing it in 3 weeks. But I was so terrified about messing up stellar cartography. I said no at first. And then he called me back a few days later. He's like, we've got internet here. There's a FedEx delivery, like you can send stuff back and forth. And I'm like, wait, we have strong enough Wi-Fi. You can get on and research. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't want to mess this up, even if it's fun. But then I got there and I had been with some of the other fan films, and they were like community theater. They were kind of like what you'd expect. And the bar was so much higher on continues. It was like markers, speed, action. And so many people who were professionals or some professionals in the cast. And then people, camera, lighting, sound, makeup. Wardrobe was the weakest point at the beginning. Not that you could tell on screen, but wardrobe as in staffing it. And within a couple of episodes, that was up to par too. And but it was like I thought I was just gonna, I don't want to say slum in. I was just going to learn my lines on the run and come in and do it, because that's everything else I'd ever seen looked that way. And this was not that. And I was behind. Right. And I was working on stellar cartography at night while we shot. And the first day, even the call sheet wasn't right. And I had scenes with lines where I thought I didn't have scenes with lines. Anyway, I started off a little slow, and I think people were a little perturbed. They'd never say that. Okay. Everybody's too nice.
Was that the first time you'd ever done a camera type of show?
It really was. I'd done theater years before.
Right, because it's completely different.
And it's complete. And I didn't think about that, and I hadn't really worried about camera acting or anything. Once or twice, I had done something that was like a little one scene, one camera bit where I was a guest star in somebody's well-financed YouTube series. They did like an 8-part, not YouTube. It was shot. It was shown on YouTube, but she did it, and she did it all by the guilds. And I'm still, I think, since it doesn't go away, I'm thinking, there's like a next door SAG.
Oh, it's not SAG?
No, it was. She did everything by the book so she could qualify all her people for whatever the union was. Like preliminary or associate or something. Anyway, I forget what it's called. Like next door, I can say that I'm this SAG status, because the way she produced it, she did all her paperwork and did, it was reduced budget, but still.
Well, I guess you can't be on my show.
And that was a great.
Nobody on my show is SAG, as far as I know.
Oh yeah, nothing of mine. But anyway, it was.
But supposedly, actually, now that they've changed the rules, supposedly it's pretty easy to have SAG actors. You just fill out some online form and then call it a.
Especially now, we're 10 times more. This was like 10 years ago, and now everything is 10 times more that direction than it was even 10 years ago. Everything online.
Yeah.
But basically, that was a good experience, and then I'd seen some of the other fan films shoot, and but the other thing was I've done my McCoy, my party imitation of McCoy and Dee for years, and Jim, damn it, I've done that for ages, and I didn't want to.
Damn it, Jim!
I didn't.
Yes, I'm a doctor, not
a promotional T-shirt wearer. Yes.
There's one of these that I don't know what it is, but most of them I know. Like bricklayer. Escalator. I don't know what that is. Whatever.
There's a couple that aren't exactly like he says, "What am I? A moonshell conductor?" He doesn't say, "I'm a doctor, not a moonshell," which I don't like strictly think of that as a line, but people adapt it. Anyway, I didn't want to do the impersonation, the party thing, and I regret that, because I think I pulled it back too much, and they were all directing me to be quiet. Anyway, it's really hard for me to watch, because I really enjoyed the whole experience and meeting the people. And the first one, I just feel like I was very restrained and also very tired. I feel like I'm exhausted. And the second one, I had about 25% as much to do on screen, but I feel a whole lot better about Lolani, which was about the Orion slave girl.
Because interestingly enough, when you go back and watch,
I feel a lot better about my McCoy in the second one than I did the first one.
When you go back and watch the original series and you watch DeForest Kelley's performance, I mean, he just amps it up all the time. I mean, give him any line, and he's like, he's like spitting venom.
Well,
You know?
then sometimes it's like, you know, this my favorite. I have two favorite D scenes. One of them is with Decker when he stomps off, but he has
Yeah.
the whole thing with Spock about Spock, do something, you know, and he says, you know, you cannot relieve Commodore Decker. Um, if you have, you know, if Commodore Decker, you know, tests unstable, you can relieve him on that basis. And he goes, I'll certify that right now. And then he says, you'll also ask you to produce your medical records to prove it. And McCoy says, now, you know, I haven't had time to run an examination on him. And then he says, then your statement would not be considered. So I mean, like,
Yeah.
he goes up
That's such a good
that one, and
episode.
also the one where he wakes, not where he's crazy, but when he gets over the cordrazine drug and sitting on it forever, and he wakes up in the cot, and Edith is looking at him, kind of nursing him, and he's still like drugged out, but he's back to himself. And she's like, she's talking to him, and he says, like, I don't even know who you are. What are you? And he says, I am Leonard McCoy, Chief Medical Officer of the USS Enterprise. And she says, well, I hate to doubt you, but that's hardly a naval uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, that's all right, my dear, that's all right, because I don't believe in you either. And then he, you know, leans back. And that was a really, you know, I feel like Shatner got all sucked up all the time, and then Nimoy for, okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna do that again. Can I have one more take? You know, that kind of thing. And I think D, much less Jimmy and the rest of them, never were where they had that kind of oomph to either want to do it, or that they got to, or they saved it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's times when they're just, I don't want to say they're phoning it in, but there's times when it's a master shot and they don't, you know, they don't get a close up. They don't even get a two shot. But there's times when McCoy, yeah, when D really gets to do some fun stuff and have a
Yeah.
moment. And
Yeah.
even
Well, of
Jimmy,
course,
there's
then
times
there's
when
the
Jimmy really
episode
gets a
in the Hollow Asteroid. What was the name of that one?
For the World is Hollow and I've Touched the Sky.
Yeah. That's his big episode.
Yeah, it's not, you know, it's not even my favorite. I just feel like it's a token, oh, let's give McCoy a romance.
Yeah, though, I mean, the thing about the Star Trek episodes is they have these things in them that just stick in your mind. Like that episode, the thing that will always be in my mind is that old man who says it, you know, well, I climbed him out, reached up and I touched the sky. And then there's the next thing where he's like, oh, and he's getting that pain thing in the side of his head. Like that just sticks in your mind forever. You know? Stuff
What
like
sticks
that
in
Star
my
Trek
mind
did.
forever is that he looks like, speaking of your Romulan commander and Spock's father, he looks just like that guy who the Telosians conjured up as the leader of the American Continent Institute crash land survey on Talos 4. Because he was.
Oh,
Same
okay.
guy. Yeah.
How dare they recycle actors? It ain't right.
How dare they give people a paycheck? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay, I need to double back to. I'm not gonna let Balance of Terror go. So, like a lot of people consider that like one of the best episodes, despite the
Yeah.
flaws that we already mentioned. But
No, it is. I did nothing I meant. It's like in my top 10 or 15 out of the, I just don't have it in my top 3 or 4 or 5, but it's a great episode. And you can't knock the moment of the, you know, leave any prejudice you've got in your quarters.
I know.
Not on my bridge. I mean, yeah.
That was great. And also surprisingly, when you go back and watch, the cinematography in that episode is really interesting. It's very dark.
Mhm.
It's very, and it's done, the camera work is done so much differently than all the other Star Trek episodes.
Well, they're doing they're doing that submarine feel.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a submarine episode. And then, of course, Strange New Worlds last week had, you could see there was Balance of Terror. You're doing your submarine episode.
Yep.
You know, oh, I was going to say, that was another thing that bugged me. If we're going to nitpick. Okay, so the Gorns hit the ship, and somehow they knock out the entire array of photon torpedoes, except for one, right? But then they show the shot of the two torpedo tubes, and there's no damage on either one of them. So what's the deal with that?
I didn't even think about that. Is it a control feature?
Well, I mean, I assume, like, somehow, I guess you'd have to explain it away somehow, some other way. But they got hit, the shields are down, and somehow it knocked out the a whole magazine of photon torpedoes without exploding them. One thing. So the only one was left, but then they show you the close up of the two torpedo tubes, and they're completely pristine. There isn't the slightest mark on the tubes. So where, or maybe they store the torpedo tubes, the torpedoes somewhere else.
Well, usually most all the standard, stand now from next gen forward, they kind of show that for the torpedo tubes kind of at least stored near, even on Enterprise, they even showed you the stack and they showed you the entry points for the
Yeah, you
in
would
the
think
armor.
it'd be right there.
But yeah,
So
there's at least a batch right there, and then maybe if you pull some more in, so they don't all go off at once. It's not like lining all your planes up at Pearl Harbor and all your battleships in a line. So hopefully they've got photons stored somewhere else. But and they run them up in there as they run through them. But
like a little conveyor belt thing.
yeah,
Okay, so maybe they store them in like the strut in between the secondary hull and the primary hull or something.
yeah, I just had not. I hadn't considered that. I was just still blown away by the fact that we'd never like gone down the mouth of a photon torpedo tube before. I was just
That was cool. It was very cool.
I was just celebrating that.
Also, I really dug that they walked out on the saucer section, and the thing that really made it was when they went down to the plate and everybody signs it. Now that was cool. That like made it real. Somehow it made it earthy and grounded the entire idea, you know?
It was weirdly like a throwback, and I say this, a whole year's or two's throwback to, do you watch Lower Decks?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's like the
I love
Lower
Lower
Decks
Decks.
bar where they found out where Spock and Kirk had signed when they were cadets, and it was the
Yeah.
same bar at the same station. Yeah. It was in a weird way, it was like crossing
Yeah.
the streams of live action
Yeah.
anime.
Yeah, there was so much going on in that episode. Again,
Well, I've seen that. I'm going to say the one coming up seems a little bit, I don't want to say formulaic, but it feels a little more original series where they're dabbling in a local culture again.
okay.
But the episode after that it's good, and I don't realize it's like the ending is bigger than the episode before it.
Now, who do you have to know to get these previews?
If you are doing reviews or you're dealing with, and I didn't at first, there was some kind of a change last year where they liberalized some of that at some point. I don't know what happened. If they decided they're going to ramp up with 5 shows, they better start getting out to a broader audience. But I mean,
So they give you like a secret URL and you can go watch it.
Yeah, the media list now. You have an email and it has the yes.
Oh, so all I got to do is hack your Gmail account and I'll be able to find that.
Yeah, if I had a Gmail account.
Oh, well.
I just never used Gmail.
Okay.
I went from having an old boring
way to
AOL
redirect,
having a name domain, and I just totally bypassed. It's like going from Coke to rum and Coke, and you just totally bypass beer.
Or you can bypass the Coke and just do the straight rum.
Yeah. If there was any,
which is my preference.
As long as it's sweet. I got the sweet tooth. As long as it's kind of quasi sweet, it's okay.
I've got the stuff. Okay. I got the stuff that on my show I call it Telosian bourbon, but it's this sort of pirate rum that it's from the Caribbean, so it's got like this banana sweetness to it. It's really good. And
what's the brand of it, or is this some? I mean, is this?
I mean, it's a real rum. It's like well, I could go get it. I know exactly where it is. Or you could go watch my show, because the captain's got it on right there on in his quarters right there. So, of course, when we do the show, the captain, I'm not drinking rum when I'm doing the show. I actually changed it out with iced tea.
Uh-huh. Oh,
so I could do several takes without getting tipsy, but still. Anyway.
Well, that's always helpful.
It's good. Anyway, you'd probably really like it. So, if you like kind of a sweet type of rum, yeah. Oh, another thing that you probably really like, if you like sweet, have you ever done it's called, I think, Tennessee honey whiskey or something like that? You ever had that?
I've I have to say no.
It's really good. It's a whiskey that's got real honey in it, so it's sweet. Um, yeah, it's good.
Oh,
Anyway, okay.
well, no, I mean, the Trek Files is my podcast on with Roddenberry Productions, and we weren't even getting screeners for a long time. Anyway, I don't know what happened, but something along the way when the two animated series started coming thick and fast, and Prodigy started coming down the line, something changed. But anyway, so yeah, I don't abuse it, and
Okay.
I don't lean in. But my wife was also a big Star Trek fan, and then she worked on Voyager 5 years,
Oh,
and then
cool.
it was
What does
burned
she do?
out. She was the assistant script coordinator. She did basically was the script typist plus did continuity, got the pages out to everybody. And there was the script coordinator, and then there was, when they had two shows, they added a person beneath that person because it was so complex. And Star Trek page changes were insane. And in the days when they actually printed paper, now everything is just more PDFs.
Okay, so
But
what
in
I
the days
heard,
when you had physical paper, huh?
what I heard, and maybe you can confirm this, is that on Voyager, there were a lot of times where they didn't have the script ready until like a day before they were shooting.
Oh, that's true. That's a Star Trek hallmark, like original series. But yeah, it came in. That would come and go depending on who was running things. But it would be that way. And then when Jerry Taylor retired, and Brannon's fifth season was the showrunner, and he
Hmm.
was trying to kind of make the show leaner and meaner a little bit. And he was rewriting madly. And there were times when they even would like add a new set on 2 or 3 days notice, and they would have set construction throwing something together and building and painting like over a weekend to have something to shoot in, which was insane. If they were going to add new scenes or something, they would like pick a standing set or get one of the sets that was already built,
Yeah,
and get the
and
regulars
just
to test.
redress it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
so
it was really insane. She worked a lot of late. She cursed Brandon's name for years until she
so
realized she qualified for being vested in pension.
where the heck was Screen Actors Guild during this? They should have protested and said, "Look, you have to have this script at least a week ahead, so our actors have a chance to at least have a fighting chance to learn their
Those
lines."
those actors know that if they just survive it, they're going to have 40 or 50 years of Star Trek conventions as, a little bit of inside income, side hustles. So nobody complains too much.
Yeah. Okay, speaking of conventions, so do you like I went to Star Trek Las Vegas for the
I
first
I
time, and I just completely fell in love with the vendor room. Like I spent my whole time in there.
that will do it. I need to pause just a second.
Okay,
I
pausing.
gotta, yeah, my wife's, so
All
that can
right,
all cut out.
cut to
Okay.
the chase. Okay, so
But I kind of need to wrap up in
okay, 10
5 10 minutes.
minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, we can do it. So then, like, do you have a Larry Nemecek table in the vendor room, perchance?
Yes.
A Dr. Trek
Yeah,
table?
yeah. There's always a Trekland. I mean, that's my con banner right there. That's
Cool.
what's usually in the back. Yeah.
Okay, I'll check you out. I'll find you and
Are
say
you coming?
hi.
So you're coming back to Vegas this year? Is that what that
Yeah,
means?
I got my room and I got my badge and everything, and I'll come over and I'll give you one of my cards.
All righty.
I'll do my whole spiel.
I'll give you one of my cards and give you one of my spiels.
Oh, cool. That's cool. So, okay, so we're gonna wrap it up pretty quick. We'll put links to your website and your
Okay.
Facebook and your YouTube channel, and then also some of your
My
books, right?
Instagram and my Twitter. Okay.
Sure, everything. Twitter. Do you have an OnlyFans, perchance?
No, I don't.
Okay, we'll work on that. Do you watch Trek Culture?
What?
Do you watch Trek Culture with Sean Farrick?
I occasionally I wander into it. Yeah.
He's really good. I mean, he pretty much took over that show. Anyways, but he hasn't. He's really a trip because he put some pretty wild stuff out on Instagram and TikTok, and then he's got an OnlyFans site. So The guy's wild, but he's going to be at Star Trek Las Vegas this year. I found out.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I'm looking forward to meeting him. I'm trying to get him on my show. Supposedly we're going to do an interview sometime, but it hasn't happened yet. But yeah, so do you see yourself doing any more fan series type of stuff?
Maybe if it was the right situation and all that. I just had to, that was part of why I backed off. One of them was Chuck wanted to come back and be McCoy again. But also I was trying to launch my Portal 47 business. I was trying to pioneer a whole new concept of bringing more backstage behind the scenes to people that they
Mhm.
could not get. This was 7 years ago. People didn't Zoom 7 years ago, but I was using that to bring all these people and voices that would add more layers of what people knew from across the eras.
Mhm.
Backstage people that they rarely, if ever, got interviewed, or you never saw people, tiny fraction at an actual con.
Right.
So doing all that, and I mean up and down the line of, from producers and writers and directors to stand-ins and stunt people and craft service and security guards, and go around the band, arts, art, visual effects, props, costumes, whatever. And all the producers and there are just a mishmash of names and no one knows what they actually do, but a lot of them have really, really good stories, and a lot of them have their own
Right.
photos and stuff. So bringing that all out and
That's
my
cool.
own stuff, that's Portal 47. And I wanted to work on that. And then what has blown up and taken off the last couple of years is doing location tours of location sites, and not just going there and go, oh, there's Vasquez Rocks, Gorn fight, ha ha ha, but actually saying, here's somebody who filmed, or
Oh,
here's all the different times it was used, here's when they did, here's the time, here's the time of year, here's the order of, here's the call sheets from when they were out here,
wow.
that kind of
So,
thing. And the famous ones and the obscure ones both. So doing that for people, as a custom way, and also some organized events. And that was just getting going, and then we shut down for the pandemic.
okay.
Now it's getting launched again. So
So
that's,
is this like your full-time gig now, or do you also have like a day job?
no, this is, well, it's been my back 10, 15 years ago, before everything blew up after the Paramount divorce, and when Enterprise went down, I was writing, I was editing the Communicator official magazine, doing fact files in the UK, consulting for licensing, going to cons and doing con talks and guesting,
Cool.
and then the companion was a book, and then there's a couple of books I wanted to do. And then I started working on a documentary 10 years ago called The Con of Wrath, that was about a real live event that will be 40 years old this year. And then we did all the content, and we got bogged down in the post about exactly the right strategy to take. And then we pulled out of that, and then the pandemic hit, and everybody had to scramble. And everybody, me and an editor, me and my
Hmm.
cameraman. So we're trying to get that back, because people are like, Larry, you've been working on this forever. What's going on?
You
So,
still you have all the footage, right? You just got
oh
to
yeah,
edit
yeah, yeah.
it.
Everything's fine. It's just coming up with a plan and working through the transcripts and the interview. We had like 60 people. We have everybody from George and Nichelle and the late Harv Bennett and Walter and Jimmy Doohan's fiance,
Okay.
Jimmy Doohan's widow, Wendy, and Carrie O'Quinn from Starlog, who was the host of the part of the talk show, and to fans and dealers and all that.
You guys
And
have an editor?
I do. And
Okay.
he's been going through his own transition in life and everything.
Okay.
We're trying to get back on track. And
Okay. Now, do you pay union scale?
no, this
Because I
was a
happen to
shade
know
tree
a union
project.
scale editor who's looking for a gig for a couple of months.
You what?
Yeah, Chad Rubel just put a thing out on Twitter. He's looking
Oh,
for a gig. Do you know him?
yeah. I know him through Twitter. I know he works on the current shows.
Okay, yeah. And
Yeah.
he's actually, I think he's my favorite editor for Discovery. He always does some really interesting stuff.
Yeah. Well, they've got their pick of the cream of the crop,
Yeah,
and who doesn't want to have Star Trek in your resume on your
right.
CV? Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, to answer your question, that's what's taken up time. Yeah. And
Okay, cool, cool.
inventing some of this stuff and keeping it going. And yeah.
Okay, well, I'll look for you at Star Trek Las Vegas.
You better, man.
And then so Twitter, you don't do direct messaging on Twitter, do you?
Mm-hmm.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. I wonder why. Maybe you have to follow me for me to be
Well,
able to
that would
DM
be
you.
helpful, but if I followed you, we could from now. I don't follow people I don't know,
Okay.
so out randomly. So
Oh, I would be honored if you were to follow me.
I would be
And
honored.
then we might be able to DM each other occasionally.
I remember when DM meant Dungeon Master, but I know it's
Yeah.
been not that way for 10 years now, so 12 even.
Well, I know what a DM is in both contexts.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
keep it straight.
Yeah, yeah. I'm actually somewhat new to Twitter, but I've built up a following of like over 4,000 followers.
Wow, good.
Yeah. So,
Well, has this
uh,
been like a typical? I mean, I listened to half of one show, I think, with Muhammad. Has this
yeah,
been a
that was a
typical
good one.
show? Okay.
I mean, basically, we just talk. We talk about whatever the guest is into, and it's always interesting, you know. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope I nerded out in the right ways here. I didn't even hit stars and planets and stellar cartography much, but I guess I did. We mentioned it, so
Well, I tried to
kind of what my.
challenge you, and you threw out a term that was like astrogeography or
Oh, I
something.
said astrogeography, but I didn't say astrography, which was the term we tried to have
I
to
was gonna say astrogeography. That doesn't make sense because it's stars and
stars
the
and
Earth.
Earth. Yeah.
So, like, take your pick.
It would actually be astrography, and that's why I said Earth.
Astrography. I'll buy
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Well, so you have to go take care of your wife. Um, so we got to cut it short a little bit, but hopefully we can come back again and just go off on some other wild tangents that have something to do with Star Trek.
Yes, totally.
Oh,
The
and
only
then for
thing,
sure, I'm making a plug. You got to watch the Orville.
oh, I'll
You
watch the
have
Orc.
to watch the. Okay, I'll let. And this is very common. The first episode, halfway through, I started crying. It was so good. In
I
fact,
heard
I'm
it was a
starting to
darker
tear up now.
tone.
If I think about it, I might start crying right now.
Oh, we don't want that. Or do we? Yes, we do.
Yeah, I mean, it was that good. I've watched it
It
three
was good.
times now, and it's like it's going to be a great season. It already is. The first episode was really,
Well, I hope they get four. I hope they come back and get four.
yeah,
Yeah, a lot of Trek people work on. I mean, Andre and Brannon and Dave Goodman
right,
and I don't know if Marvin Rush is still the DP, but I know he
yeah.
DP earlier. So
Um,
talk about that
well,
TNG.
it's obvious. Again, I would say, I mean, and you kind of almost said it, or maybe you did. I would say the reason why Strange New Worlds is what it is right now is because of the Orville. Like the Orville showed the Star Trek folks, you guys, this is what Star Trek's supposed to be.
Maybe, but I'm just going to say that I think internally, this is going to turn into a DS9 Babylon 5 thing, isn't it? I
Okay.
think, I think without the acrimony, I think I predicted when people were so upset with Discovery, a lot of people were upset with Discovery early on, that it just
Oh
didn't
yeah.
feel right and all this stuff. I
It
said,
wasn't Star
because
Trek.
of the serialized nature and it being so dark and unrelentingly gloomy the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, gang, they're competing with Game of Thrones. That's the level in their head. It's going to be 4 or 5, 6 series before this radical new idea arises where we have standalone shows and there's humor. And I was kidding, but that's exactly what's happened. It's like they had to exist over here for this to be a fresh, for old Star Trek, don't tell anybody, for old Star Trek to be a radical new idea, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
Well, surprisingly, I know you gotta go, but like, it's like my wife is really into Star Trek, and she loves especially the movies, the original series movies, but she refused to watch Discovery, and I kind of had to twist her arm to get her to watch some of Lower Decks, but she started liking it.
Mm-hmm.
But she immediately fell in love with Strange New World. Just like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I like this show. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's like mine. She was burned out and she didn't. And then the last month or two, she binged watched Enterprise and then all the modern shows and fast forwarded through a lot of things. But
Yeah.
Strange New Worlds is kind of like gone back to,
Yeah, it's nailing it.
yeah.
The other thing that was so cool, okay, one thing you just got to stop me when you like Matt, we got to go by. Um, Naomi Melmoot, I hope I said her last name right.
Uh-huh. Yes, the
She's the
score,
one who's doing the scores for
episodic
both.
scores. Yeah.
She's doing the scores for the background music for Strange New World and also for Prodigy. Super talented lady. And
Yeah. Yes.
I'm also planning to have her on my show
Oh, that's awesome. Yes.
because we've been kind of DMing each other. But
Great.
she
There's
she
moments when I'm listening to a Strange New and I just go, that's very, it's kind of like they're like musical mood tones, but they have not like stinger cues, but there's moments when you feel like you're watching especially a first season show.
yeah. Well, of course, I mean they directly quoted when they were on Vulcan. Dun, 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 dun,
Oh,
dun, dun, dun,
Well,
dun,
that
dun,
was an
dun.
easy one. Once you
Yeah,
say we can do that, then that's easy. But I'm talking about the
yeah,
times when it's like not obviously what you might go with. And
right. Sometimes it's just really beautiful cinematic score writing that's really good.
hmm
I'm a composer too, besides a musician. So I compose music, and so I mean, I listen and I analyze it and same type of thing. So I'm like, you know what, this music is really good.
one
I'm
thing
really
about the Berman
impressed.
era that was he didn't want the music. He didn't want people 30 years later to be humming anything from Next Gen. And boy, we sure don't.
Yeah, we
So,
don't. But you go back to the original series, there's so much good music in there.
hmm
It's
and so
funny.
many
People kind of take it for granted and they think
ama-
it's corny, but actually, if you listen to it from a composer's point of view, you're like, whoa, that's really good.
mhm.
It's
And
really
a lot of it, when you
experimental
hear
and
the
it's
music, you
really
think of the
interesting.
scene. You see a scene, you think of the music. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's great.
Well,
Okay, I better
maybe
let you go.
on that
So,
note, Matt,
okay.
we
Ha, good one.
on that note, yes, by any measure, we should call that a high bar and maybe end it there. But
Sounds good. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. I guess we just got to ramble, but it was fun rambling.
yeah, it was fun rambling with you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Live long and prosper, my friend. I'm looking forward to seeing you at Star Trek Las Vegas.
Me too. And as
I'm
we
looking forward
say,
to DMing you once you follow me on Twitter.
okay, you're not even going to make me roll up a character. Just DM me out of the blue. Okay.
But yeah, just say, hey, Matt, it's Larry, your best buddy.
Of course, Matt. We'll see.
Live
Yeah, we'll
long.
see.
What's that?
I said no, totally see you at Vegas. And you were LLNPing me, and I said, as we say at Trekland, trek well.
Trek well. Yeah. Okay. And live long and prosper. And then if for the Orville, it's Jaloja long and prosper.
Geelong.
If you know your Orville, that you'll get the joke.
Okay, it's been like 2 years since I watched an Orville. So
Okay, so Jaloja is the episode where Bortus has to go back to his planet to urinate over the cliff.
yeah.
And when you do you do your yearly urination, that's called Jaloja. So
Okay.
Jaloja long and prosper.
Got it. Okay.
Especially if you're a man over 50, that's a good thing.
It's a good thing to get pissed off when you're
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, Matt.
Oh my God.
Shields up on that sucker. Okay, Matt. No, thank you very much. And let me talk about we talked about tours and Portal and everything. So I just say if anything I said was of curiosity, go check out stuff.
Okay, well, I'm going to put
main
links
thing
to
is
all your stuff down here.
the main thing is I try not to do the same old, whether it's me talking or whatever I'm doing as a business or as a podcast or a live stream on Tuesdays, my Tuesday live at 1:00 Pacific, Trekland Tuesdays live, whatever it is I do, I try not to do the same old, same old.
Right.
So I try to add something new, to a new experience, new conversation, and most of all, bring out something new that is just not more of the same and people haven't heard or seen before.
My kind of guy.
Or get the voices out that people don't ever get to see and hear from. So,
Great.
but anyway.
All right. Take care, sir.
Okay.
Till next time.
Thanks, Matt.
Pranakasha production. Fantastic creations emerging spontaneously from the space of life.
For the benefit of all beings everywhere.
We gotta change.